Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So inshallah we'll pick up where we left off in the Mutn Shujaa. And we last talked about some of we've been through the mu'amalat, and we talked about the shariah, and that was, I believe, the last thing we left off was from the wakala, which is similar to a shariah, where you're letting someone else do the permission. You're giving someone permission to do something on behalf of you. So the next thing we're going to pick up here is al-iqrar. And so this is the next chapter we're going to go into. And iqrar, logatan, is ithbat. It's like affirming something. So this is usually this would be affirming that it would be someone confessing to something that is that they have either done or they owe or something of this sort. So they confess to this thing, and this is something that they're basically making themselves liable for this thing, or they're saying that I have done this, and usually it's in form of like an official statement that they make. So. So like the technical definition would be ikhbaru shakhsi bihaqqin alayhi. So like someone tells about himself about something that is owed, or like a haqq, the right of something that is upon him, like some right that is upon him. And so here the author, he's going to talk about this. He's going to talk about two different types of iqrar and some of the ahkam regarding this. So Abu Shujaa rahimahullah, he says, faslun wal muqarru bihi darbani haqqullahi ta'ala wa haqqul adami. And so here he says the al-muqarru bihi, this is the thing that he's confessing to. Muqarru bihi. So this is muqarr is the ism maf'ul of iqrar. Aqarra, yuqirru, and so like the muqir is the person who's giving, he's the confessor, and the thing that's being confessed is the muqarru bihi. All right, the thing confessed is muqarru bihi, and the muqir is the confessor. And so this is also another thing, and also the muqarrullah is the person that's being confessed for, like that would be confessed, say if it was for someone else. Yeah. So here he says there's two different types: haqqullahi ta'ala wa haqqul adami. And so these are two different types of things that someone would confess to. And so he gives these basic things, and one is like a haqq. Haqq that is for Allah, like a right of Allah, is say someone committed zina. So if they committed zina and they said, I committed zina, so if this person said, I committed zina, and he confesses to this, then in this case, this is a right of Allah for him to be stoned. All right, and so this is something that normally would be like if there's any shubha, then this would be something that's dropped for him. Like if there's any shubha on this right, say he was forced to or something, or if he committed zina and there was 3 people that saw him, not 4 people that saw they saw like the actual penetration, and these are trustworthy witnesses. If they didn't go all the way through this, they would be dropped on him. So it's something that normally any shubha, or if this was someone that he thought was his wife but he accidentally had zina, So any of these other situations, any type of shubha or anything that is unclear or uncertain about this would drop the had, which is the stoning. And the same thing like someone who drank shurb al-khamr. This is another right for him to get beat with the 40 times for him to get beaten. Then in this case it would be also, this is a right for Allah, and it's not a right of someone else. So the same thing if someone steals. The hand getting cut is a right of Allah, this is not the right of the person his stuff was stolen. And the right for him is to get his stuff back or replaced. And so this type, if someone makes this type, this is one type. If someone confesses to the thing that is the right of Allah, then in this case the haqqullah is one type, and the haqqul adami, which this is the right of someone else, this is the right of other people. If this person confesses to something that is the right for other people, then this is dealt differently. Such as if someone said someone else committed zina, so like this is their right for that person to get the had of qadf, and so like this is the right of the enemy, that is for that person. So he says here, as for the first one, he says فَحَقُّ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى يَصِحُّ الرُّجُوعُ فِيهِ عَنِ الْإِقْرَارِ بِهِ. And so he says, so the rights of Allah, if he confesses to it, يصح الرجوع فيه عن الإقرار به. And it's okay for him, like it's okay for him to do it, to go back on that iqrar, like to take it back. And so this comes from the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, when Ma'iz radiallahu anhu, when he confessed to having zina to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ told him, لَعَلَّكَ قَبَّلْتَ, like that you probably only kissed, like he's trying to give him a way out, so he doesn't actually have to give him the had. And he said, لَعَلَّكَ لَمَسْتَ, like that you probably only touched, you didn't go all the way. And he was and then he said, Abika Junun, like after he said no, that he actually did it. And he said, Abika Junun, like are you mad? Like to give him any way to come out and come back from his iqrar with that. And so of course this shows that even though he said this, and the Prophet ﷺ gave him a way out, then it's allowed for someone to come back on iqrar when it comes to the rights of Allah. And because this is, as I mentioned before, it's all of the rights of Allah are built on musamaha, that is built on like that Allah would forgive, and Allah is forgiving, and Allah wants to cover these faults of others, as opposed to the rights of people. They need to be taken care of, because this is the opposite. The rights of people always need to be dealt with properly. So and he says here, so the rights of Allah, it's okay for him to go back on it. يَصِحُ الرُّجُوعُ فِيهِ عَنِ الْإِقْرَارِ بِهِ. And he says, وَحَقُّ الْآدَمِ, so as to the rights of humans or of people, and لَا يَصِحُ الرُّجُوعُ فِيهِ عَنِ الْإِقْرَارِ بِهِ. So it's not okay for him to go back. So if he said anything, so if he said, I owe Zayd $100. As soon as he says this, khalas, he owes him $100. Even if like he said this, he can't go back. He's like, no, I was just kidding. No. Or he said, no, I meant Amr. Okay, Amr as well. And Zayd. Like, so both of them. Because it doesn't go back. You can never go back. If you ever confess to that you owe someone something, especially like, and this is like iqrar, which is formal in front of like a judge or something. In this case, this person owes it. There's no going back on it. If he says he owes it, he owes it. And he has to go and come through with it. And there's no way for him to go back. And of course, if he accidentally, like if he was known to actually make a mistake, and something, this is something else. But if he said it, this is what it meant for the most part. If he meant what he said, of course he has to go through with following through with this thing, and he's held to it, and he can't go back on it. So the next thing that Abu Shujaa, he says here, وَتَفْتَقِرُ صِحَّةُ الْإِقْرَارِ إِلَى ثَلَاثَةِ شَرَائِطَ. And so he says, for it to be sahih, for the iqrar to be sahih, it has three conditions, ثَلَاثَةِ شَرَائِطَ. And so he says, the first one is al-bulugh. So someone who's a kid, he can't do iqrar. Like if he says, oh, I owe someone this, that, or the other, or I broke this, his iqrar is never taken. And this is a general principle with any kids before the bulugh, we don't take their word. We never take their word for anything. If they're a kid, like if they're doing anything like formally, we don't take their shahada. If they have a shahada of someone, this is not accepted. They have to reach bulugh for us to take their shahada or take their word about something, because we don't take that into it. Even if they are mumayyiz, like even if they are like a decent person, we still wouldn't take it from them, because they're not held accountable. And this is the basic concept, that their sins are not held accountable for them, so we don't take that into consideration. Of course, if he says that he's baligh, then we'd take it. If he says, no, I hit bulugh, then we'd take it. If that's even possible for him. Yeah. And so, and then the second condition that he mentions here for the first one is that he's bulugh, that he's baligh. And the second one is al-aql. So of course this person has to be sane. If he's not sane, his same reason as the kid, rufi'a minhu al-qalam. And so, like, since the writing is lifted, or his like accountability is not there, the same person for someone who's insane, he has no aql. If he doesn't have his aql or his sanity, then of course he's not going to be able to do iqrar about something. We don't take his word for it. And of course, maybe an insane person says, I did this, that, and the other, and this, that, and the other. We don't take their word for it. And also al-ikhtiyar, and this is also very important, that ikhtiyar, the person is actually able to make this. So if someone is forced, such as if someone is put under pressure, such as their wife is taken captive or something, or they have a kid that's held hostage, for them to say something, and they say it, they're being forced. or if they're like if they're going to be, this guy tells them, I'm gonna like blow up your house or something crazy, anything of this sort where he doesn't have the actual choice to do it unless you say this in front of the judge. And if he says this in front of the judge, it's not sahih, because he's being forced. And so if he's forced, then in this case it wouldn't be taken into consideration, and this would not be considered iqrar, that is sahih. And he also says, وَإِن كَانَ بِمَالٍ اعْتُبِرَ فِيهِ شَرْطٌ رَابِعٌ. And so if it's something that has to do with mal, which is money, anything that has to do with like property or ownership of something, then there's a fourth condition that is also here. So like this first one, like something that's without mal is such as if somebody they talked about like a certain right for someone else. But as opposed to something that has to do with the actual properties. In this case, he also has rushd, which is that this person understands how to work with money. As we mentioned before, the person who is Shafi'i al-mubaddil li malihi, which is the person that's Shafi'i, he doesn't know how to work with money properly. So of course he makes iqrar about stuff that he doesn't even realize, or he doesn't understand. So he would not fall into this. And so these are the four conditions for the sihhat al-iqrar. And as I mentioned before, like there's shahada, and the shahada is when someone like talks about what he saw from someone else. But iqrar is him telling about himself. There's a difference between these two things. And so the last thing I think that he's going to talk about in this chapter is, he says, or there's a couple of things here. He says, وَإِذَا أَقَرَّ بِمَجْهُورٍ رُجِعَ إِلَيْهِ فِي بَيَانِهِ. So he says, I owe Zayd something. He says, I owe Zayd something. What's this something? So he's got to explain what he did. He says it's something. He's got to tell what it is. He has to come up with, what is this something that you owe him. He's not just left. He has to actually explain what is it that he owes. And so this is important, that he doesn't get left in this way. And so if he says something like, I owe him some money, okay, how much? And he actually has to tell how much. We don't leave him just to say, I owe him some money. And he has to give something. And of course, the person who does iqrar, he's always held on the basic principle that Imam Shafi'i has in this bab, is that the person who gives iqrar is only held to the least amount of, like if he says something, then he's held to the least amount of what he said. He's never held to the, like if it could hold multiple meanings, he's only held to the least amount of that. So if he said, I owe Zayd some money. So if he owed Zayd some money, so how much is it? Say if we're in dollars per se, he'd say 5 cents. Okay, you got to give him 5 cents. But if he said that it was half a penny, of course this would not be taken. He has to actually give a certain amount of money that is actually considered money that you could possibly buy something or be usable. So if he said some money, and he said this, he's off the hook. If he said 5 cents, I owe him 5 cents. He's off the hook for, at least in regards to what he said. Of course, if Zayd tells him, no, you owe me more than this, that's another issue. We'll get to that, inshallah. But as far as him, he's only held to the least amount of what he said. So if he says, I owe him a couple dollars, or I owe him a few dollars. Say he says, I owe him a few dollars. How much is he going to have to pay him?
A few dollars, right?
A few dollars, the least of a few dollars, it's like 3. Because a couple would be for 2. And for a few would be 3. So he owes him $3. And we would never say he owes him $5 or 4. No, we only take it to the least amount that this could possibly mean. Yeah. And so of course, when they talk about it in Arabic, you'll have a whole nahu. You have a whole talk in nahu about what kada wa kada means, and kada dirhamin. All of this means different. Or dirahim. All of this will have a different meaning depending on nahu, and you'll talk about this in Bab al-Tamyiz. But this actually comes up. I'm not going to go through it. This will come in later books. But this is one of the places where nahu comes in very handy. At the end of iqrar, they'll talk about all the different wordings. If someone says this in Arabic, depending on the nahu and the i'rab, there will be a different amount. And so then the next thing that he says here is, he says وَيَصِحُّ الِاسْتِثْنَاءُ فِي الْإِقْرَارِ إِذَا وَصَلَهُ بِهِ. And so he says, it's okay, the istithna, which is saying except this. We talked about this in the warqat. Talked about someone, if they wanted to make an istithna from what they said, it's okay if they connected the istithna with what they said. and they didn't separate it from anything. So this person says, I owe this guy $100 except 3. And so so in this case, he owes him 97. But if he said, I owe this guy $100, and they're like, okay, you owe him $100? Yeah. He's like, oh, except 50. No, it doesn't work. Or like, illa. So if he said, alayya $100 lahu. So in this case, if he said that he owes him 100, and he says, and he doesn't connect illa 50, then it doesn't work. But if he said illa 50, then we take it. And he only owes him 50. All right? But he has to connect it, and it has to be connected. Say he sneezes, and that's the reason he didn't connect it, was because he's sneezing or coughing. That's okay. But if he actually stopped and he was doing something else, then in this case, no. If you stopped and you had and your saying was finished, and then you wanted to come up with the istithna, we don't take it. But it needs to be connected with it. And what is reasonably acceptable. And that goes back to the urf. When it comes to what is the difference between that. And the next thing that Abu Shujaa rahimahullah said, وَهُوَ فِي حَالِ الصِّحَّةِ وَالْمَرَضِ سَوَاءٌ. So he says in the time of his sihha, which is that he is healthy, and when he's sick, such as if he's sick on his deathbed, it's the same. And we talked about before that the person on his deathbed, he's only allowed to give out 1/3 of his money. Like he's only allowed to give out. But if he's doing iqrar, can he say that almost all of his money is owed to somebody? Yeah. This is iqrar, of course he can't lie. But if he made iqrar, this is yasih. And so if he said that, oh, most of my money is owed, or if he said half of 2 of his houses and whatnot are owed to somebody, and that's all he has, and this is more than the 1/3 that he's allowed to give out. But he says, no, this is his property. I was actually not giving it back to him. This is actually his property, and he gives this testimony, this confession on his deathbed. It actually goes through, and it's not considered as he's going over his 1/3. No, because this is actually, he's telling this person, he's letting us know that this is not his right anyways, as opposed to him giving something from his own wealth. That makes a difference, because he's saying this isn't my wealth in the first place. He's saying this isn't my wealth. So he says that this is owed to somebody else. And so on his deathbed, he can do as much as he wants to say that he's done that. Yes, of course he can't lie. There's no lying here, especially not to harm other people. But he's supposed to, if he does have a dain on him and he's on his deathbed, he needs to let people know about that dain so it can be paid on his behalf. So if somebody does have a dain and he knows he's going to die, he needs to let people know about that dain so they can pay it from his from what's left from his from his wealth. And so it's the same. There's no limit on the amount that he can do when it comes to iqrar in this. Any questions over this chapter before we move on, inshallah? Yeah. And so and the next thing that we're going to go into is we're going to go into ariyah. And so the ariyah, sometimes with tashdid, or ariyah, which is lending. It's a chapter of lending. And this is what you would call for the thing, for someone who's lending something. You would say that this is the thing that's lended is the ariyah, which is something that someone borrowed. And there's certain ahkam that comes to something that's borrowed, and it's very important because there's a difference between something that's borrowed and something that is rented. And the basic difference is someone who is borrowing something, this person who's borrowing from it, he is receiving something for free. And so he's held, we would say that he's also held liable for making sure that this thing, it doesn't get damaged under his property. Even if it's something, say if it was something that absolutely it wasn't necessarily his fault, but it got damaged under his property, and then in this case he'd be held liable for this thing, unless it was something that was known that this would normally happen. But there's a difference between this and such as someone who's renting. So if someone's renting something and they did everything as normal and then it broke down, are they required to replace it? No, because they're actually paying for this service, as opposed to the person who's borrowing something. He's actually taking a favor from this person. So there's a little different of that. He's going to talk about this. And since this is a favor, the person that does this, he's doing a favor. And of course the basis of it, or the evidence for this and the basis that comes from the Quran is وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى. So to help each other with good. and taqwa, like birri wa taqwa. Of course, bir is all kinds of goodness, and like that encompasses mustahabbat and the wajibat. And a taqwa is like is making sure that you do the wajibat, and also making sure that you don't fall into any of the haram. And also al bir would be also staying away from the makruhat. So bir is bigger than taqwa. And so then also وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَاعُونَ. Al-ma'un, this is something that someone would lend to somebody else that is something normal, like something simple that he would give to his neighbors or someone who needs something. So if someone needs a screwdriver for something, you can give them a screwdriver. Like this is something that you shouldn't stop someone from helping what they need. Like these little basic things. This is something we should all help each other with. And so this is this is the basis of it from the Quran and the Sunnah. And so the author here, he's going to go into, and the first thing he says here in Fasl, وَكُلُّ مَا أَمْكَنَ الْإِنْتِفَاعُ بِهِ مَعَ بَقَاءِ عَيْنِهِ جَازَتْ إِعَارَتُهُ إِذَا كَانَتْ مَنَافِعُهُ آثَارًا. And so he says here, and everything, this is the big principle, the qaida, everything that is permissible for someone to al-intifa' bihi. So anything that someone can have benefit from this, they can get benefit from this thing, ma baqa'i aynihi, with its ayn, which would be like the essence of it remaining. Such if I gave someone like my power bank, this you can use it, and it's not gonna, yes, you take some of the juice from it, but I can replace that. It's like the thing is still there. As opposed if I lend it out someone and I'm lending it, I lend them out a little candle. The candle is going, when you use it, it goes away. This would not work as this type of translation. You could give it to them as a gift, but as like lending it to them, this is going to go away. It's like actually getting, or if you gave someone a bit of gas and you wanted to lend them some gas for their car, this doesn't work. The gas is going to get consumed. So you can't lend gas to somebody for their car. But what you can give them, or you can either give them a loan and say like, you pay me back for this. But lending gas, no, it doesn't work. And the same thing, anything that's going to be broken normally with like, or an eraser, like sometimes maybe an eraser that's going to get used. That's the point of it. So anything that it still remains after it's being used normally, then this is okay to do, to lend it out. And also it has to be like, of course it has to be something that's permissible as well for them to lend this thing. So if someone they'll mention it, like if someone had a jariyah, like a female slave, like it's not permissible for them to lend this out to someone else and him to benefit from her. Like with the same relationships that he could have with her. So of course this is different. So it has to be something that is permissible for them to actually have the benefit from. And so if he can benefit from it, then he can lend it out to someone else to have the benefit from them. If the benefit from this thing is something that's going to leave athar. Which he means by this, like that is actually going to do something for this person. As if it's actually going to give something of worth for this person. And so the next thing that he says here is وَتَجُوزُ الْعَارِيَةُ مُطْلَقَةً وَمُقَيَّدَةً. And so he says here, then this is okay for someone to do the ariyah mutlaqa, which means without them saying how long you can borrow this, without giving them any time limit on this. Say I told someone, you can borrow my camera. Go ahead and borrow my camera. I don't tell him when I want it back. It's okay for me to say, you can borrow my camera, like, okay, so he can borrow my camera, use it, whatever he wants for that time. And then when I tell him I want it back, he has to give it back, or muqayyadatan, which is like to say, I can give you my camera, but I need it back in a month, all right? And he's like, okay, I'll give it back to you in a month. And so this is okay. You can either do it mutlaqa, without any limits, or you can do it with some type of limit for that time. And so he doesn't have to tell how long it is. If he wants to say how long it is, he can. If he wants to tell him after he's used it for a while, how long he can use it, then this is something he can do as well. And this is something that's open. It's open for this. And he says, وَهِيَ, this is the other thing that we mentioned a little bit, وَهِيَ مَضْمُونَةٌ عَلَى الْمُسْتَعِيرِ بِقِيمَتِهَا يَوْمَ تَلَفِهَا. And he says it's madmuma, and this means that it's he's liable. The person who takes it, he's liable for protecting it. So if anything happens to it while it's under his possession, he is liable for it. So say someone took my camera, okay, and they take my camera and they're using it, and I told them they could use it, but then all of a sudden the camera overheats and it dies. Like, okay, cameras do this, but like it was in his possession, say. So in this case, he has to pay for it. Then since it was in his possession, he has to replace that for that thing. And then how much does he have to pay for it? مِقِيمَتِهَا يَوْمَ تَلَفِهَا, for its worth the day that it was destroyed. So let's say it's an old camera, and when I bought it, maybe it's like $700, but when he had it, maybe it was like $400. So and the day that it died, it was only going to be worth $400 it's used. So he had paid $400 for how much it is in that way. And so this is the way that someone could use. They would see like with the most something that is borrowed. It's the person, he's liable for any damages that occur to it. So of course he should be careful with it and whatnot, and know that if something does happen, it's going to be upon him to replace it in this thing. And of course this is looking towards the fact that this person is giving him something free. So the person who takes it, it's going to be madmoon. And this also comes from and so also the Prophet ﷺ, he says in a hadith, عَلَى الْيَدِ مَا أَخَذَتْ حَتَّى تُؤَدِّيَهُ. And so like then it's upon the person that took until he gives it back. So it's something that is that the person that took this thing, he is the one responsible until he gives it back to the person. And so this is important to understand, and this is that basic principle of this. Even if he didn't do something wrong, such as say there was a lightning struck a tree right in front of him, and he was borrowing this guy's car. Lightning struck the tree that toppled the tree on top of the car, crushed the car, totaled it. This guy's got to pay for the car because it was under his. He is the one that's responsible for this thing. Yeah, even if this is normal for him to park the car in that place, and this is a normal thing, and something happens, such as this something that's out of his control, it's still upon him to replace it.
What about if he landed the car and it had like a flat tire already?
If the car already had a flat tire, this is something that's known. Yeah, then it's not upon him because he gets it the same way.
Yeah.
And so he had it in this way, and he's expected to fix it. Or the other person would be expected. Or if he didn't do anything with it and it already had the flat tire, yeah. But if something happened that actually destroyed it,
Like if he got in an accident because of the tire being flat.
If he got in an accident because of that, Allahu A'lam. Yeah. There might be more details to that. I have to see. Yeah.
So I think it was in the topic of Maman, I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
In which, if I give you like my phone as what, like a warranty, right?
Yeah, after I paid for it. Yeah.
Right. And it's stolen by like a circumstance that was not outside of my control. Somebody stole it.
Before you.
No. I think I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about the one where it's like I take like your phone or something like that, and it's under my possession, and I am responsible for making sure nobody harms it. Was that under?
This is a different one. This is called wadiyah. If you take someone, someone gives you, say I gave you my phone, so that you would hold it for me in safekeep. This is called wadiyah. Right. We'll talk about this. There's a chapter.
So in that one, like it's an amount, I have to keep it safe. But then if somebody takes it, if I damage it, then I pay and stuff like that. Right?
No. Oh, if you damage it, yeah. Yeah, if you damage it.
If somebody comes and takes it,
no, nothing upon you.
Right. So why is that different than?
Because you're doing a favor for me. By taking it, you're doing a favor for me. And this one, I'm the one doing a favor for you by letting you use it.
Okay.
All right?
Gotcha.
So these are two different things. So the wadiyah is a favor for the person who's giving the item to you. And the adiyah, what's that?
How's that a favor for that person though, for the wadiyah? That situation.
Say someone's going to America and they have a bunch of books. They want to leave it with somebody to hold it.
Okay.
Of course, like this is storage. Storage you have to pay for, or you can give it to someone who's trustworthy.
Right.
And so this person who holds it for you is doing you a favor.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Of course, there's ahkam around the wadiyah that this person shouldn't be like using the items. He should be storing it properly. So he shouldn't be taking, if someone gave him his car to hold for him, he shouldn't be taken out for joyrides. And if he did, he would be liable in that case, as opposed to him holding it in his garage and making it safe. There's differences.
Also, you mentioned like you can be renting, like I could be getting paid, or I pay you. How does it work again? I'm trying
So
to
there's
remember.
the next thing, if we talk about the ijara, which
Yeah.
is like renting,
Right.
this is different. Because I'm the one getting the benefit from you taking my item. I'm getting the money from this.
Yeah, so if you rented me your camera and I broke it, you're
Then
telling me that it's not my responsibility to pay you back?
if you broke it in a way that was that you used it normally and it broke under your control.
Like it dropped.
Dropping, maybe not. But if it like overheated, say. Like sometimes things overheat. And that's something that's kind of out of your control. Or say maybe like there was a flood and it got destroyed in the basement. And normally it wouldn't get destroyed. So something like that. And in this case, it would be different. But normally these things are, for the ijara, we look at who's the person getting the benefit from this transaction. And then the person who is the one that's on the receiving end of the benefit, he's the one who's usually held liable. Such as if I am renting something out, I am the renter, I am the one who's getting the benefit, so I'm held responsible for the damage here. Unless there's some type of funny business. Unless you've been just swinging around the camera and doing stuff with it and beating up people with my camera. And then in that case, this camera, you were doing something stupid and you're going to be held reliable. As opposed to you using it in a normal way and it breaking. Or there becoming dust in it and the shutter getting messed up or something. So these are the differences. And we'll talk, each one of these of web that come up, there's going to be these key differences. And keep in mind the difference between each one of these. And look at who's the one who's on the benefiting side of this. First, if he's lending you something, he's not getting anything from this. Him lending it is not doing anything. It's doing for you. So that's the difference here. And so the author now, he says for the next chapter, let's see how much time.
So is that, we're not going to talk about renting anymore after this?
We'll talk about renting. It hasn't come up yet. The next one we're talking about is the Ghasb. And the Ghasb is أخذ شيء ظلما. This is like the meaning of it, logatan, like linguistically, is taking something in an oppressive manner, like stealing something. Taking something, even if you're not stealing it per se, but you're taking control of it, this would be considered a Ghasb. This can happen whether it's you actually taking, I'm taking your book from you. That's Ghasb. Or if you're sitting in a spot and I push you away from your spot and I sit down in your spot and I move you from your spot in the masjid, this is also a Ghasb. Like, this is your right to sit there. If you were sitting there first, that's your right. So this is also another way. And so the definition in the sharia is istila'un ala haqqi al-ghayri bila haqq. So like to take the right of someone else without a right to this thing. So taking someone else's right without right. And so this is a Ghasb. And this is, of course, of the major sins of the kaba'ir, and this of course is of those things. If the person say he did ghasb of someone's property and he didn't give it back to this person, and he died without giving this person his right, then Allah is not going to forgive him for this thing. The person who he took from is the one that has to do the forgiving. And so this is something on the Yawm al-Qiyamah, everyone's right will be paid back. And of course, like in the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ says, of the first things that will be taken into, like judgment, are like the rights of blood. So like if someone killed someone else, this is the oppression upon someone else. This is something that's one of the first things that will be dealt with. And also that no one will enter into Jannah until every single right has been paid from someone, even if it's a small right of like a stick, like a siwak. Even something as small as this needs to be given back. Anyone that takes anything from anybody, they need to give it back. They can't steal these things or take them from them. And of course, this is something that, since it's the rights of other people, this is not something you can just make tawbah for and be okay. Your tawbah also, yes, you need to make tawbah for it, but you also need to give back that right to that person. So this is also very important. And without that, you're not off the hook. Without making things right with that person. And so these are the rights of the ibad, which are very serious. And so the author here, he says, فَصْلٌ وَمَنْ غَصَبَ مَالًا لِأَحَدٍ لَزِمَهُ رَدُّهُ. So anyone who stole anything or took the money of a property of anyone, then he needs to give it back. So he needs to give this property back to this person. And this is, of course, as I mentioned the hadith before, عَلَى الْيَدِّ مَا أَخَذَتْ حَتَّى يُؤَدِّيَهُ. So the person who took, it's upon him. He is the one responsible for it until he gives it back. He's got to give it back. And so the person has to give it back. And of course, he's going to talk about some of the other things alongside of this. What if it's not in the same condition when he gives it back? He says, وَأَرْشُ نَقْصِهِ and also he has to give back the arshu naqsihi وَأُجْرَةُ مِثْلِهِ. And so this, an arsh naqsihi, this is the difference between when this person took it and its worth, or it's like when somebody uses something. Say I took someone's car and I put 5,000 miles on it before I gave it back to them. There's a difference in the worth of this car from the time that I took it, from the time that I put the miles onto it. And so this difference in money between how much this car was worth beforehand and how much it is worth now, this has to be paid as well. You give back the car and you also gave back that difference in the worth that was destroyed, or say he broke a window in it. Okay, this window also takes out a certain amount of worth for it. Or if it got in an actual car accident, the car is never going to be the same after that car accident. It's going to have a record on that. So like this difference in worth, he has to pay this, which is called the arsh. The difference in worth from it beforehand and it now. This is called arsh. And he says, wa ujratu mithlihi. And also the time, he has to pay for it being rented as well. So if he took his car out for like a couple weeks, and then he gave it back. Alright, so he has to pay for it as if he was renting that car that whole time. He has to pay the money that would be normally for that car, like a car like this to be rented. How much would that rent be? He has to pay this as well. He gives him back the car, and he pays for any of the devaluation that he has. He pays the difference in the devaluation, and he also pays for the as if he was renting it. Of course, it doesn't make it right, but this is him giving back that right to that person as much as he can. And so I think he has to also give, you'd see how much is this thing. If it were to be rented for this time that he had it, then we would call it. Or if someone was living in someone else's house without right, they have to pay the rent for all of this time that they were living in this house. How much would this house rent for? You see how much you were in there for 4 years. Okay, all of this, you have to give this rent money to them, as well as any devaluation of what happened in the house from that. And he also says here, فَإِن تَلِفَ ضَمِنَ. And so if this item was telif, means broken, or like got damaged or broken, then he is responsible for paying for it, for any damages. He's held reliable. Of course, he's held liable for any damages. He's ضَمِنَهُ, that he has to pay for any damages to this item. So of course, someone takes the car out and goes on a joyride, wrecks it, totals it, he's responsible for this. And so this is this is important that someone understands. Of course, like this person is going to be held responsible for anything that was damaged under his hand. Of course, he's not someone who is like the person who is like, let's say, of the things that someone would take. So the wadi'ah, we'll talk about this, but the wadi'ah is this person that's holding this item, he's entrusted. Now the person, like he's amin, like he's trusted. With the same thing with the person who takes the collateral, he's trusted. So if something happens under his hand, then he's a trustworthy person. But this person is not trustworthy whatsoever. So he, of course, is going to be held responsible for this anything that goes bad under while it's under his possession. And so he says, وَإِن تَلِفَ ضَمِنَهُ and بِمِثْلِهِ إِن كَانَ لَهُ مِثْلٌ. How much does he pay for it? So how much is this thing worth? He says he pays for it with something like it, if there's something like it. So say he had money. He took someone's money that was $5,000. Okay, he gives him back and he blew the $5,000 at the casino. Okay, he gives him back he gives him back another $5,000, not that same $5,000. Okay, he blew it. He gives him back another $5,000. What if it's something that's not, you can't easily replace it? It's not something like that. أو بقيمته إن لم يكن له مثل أكثر ما كانت من يوم الغصب إلى يوم التلف. So he says, or he pays it back with its worth if he doesn't have something like it. If he can't give it back something that's just like it. If he can't replace it as what it is, then he pays back its worth. How much of the worth? Because maybe this thing from the time that he took it to the time of its destruction, maybe all of this time, maybe it had a spike in its worth. And at this point, like he stole someone's car, say. And so at the time of, and maybe 2 months afterwards, all the cars got really expensive. And then if this person had his car, he could sell it and make a lot of money. And then after 4 years, he still had this person's car. After 4 years, the car depreciated to a lower value, and this car is an old car. And so it has lower value. Then he crashes it. How much does he have to pay him? He says here, أكثر ما كانت من يوم الغصب إلى يوم التلف. So the most high worth it ever had, that peak worth that it had the whole time from the time he took it to the end. This is what he pays for. So he doesn't, at the end, maybe it's only worth like $500 because he's done so much, or maybe it's just an old car and whatnot. But there was a time when this car was worth $5,000. So he would have to pay the highest worth that this car was from the time that he took it to the last time. And this is, of course, looking at the right of this person, make sure that he's not missing any of his rights. Of course, if it was his, he could have sold it and got a big chunk of change from that time, but he was not able to do this. So this person who stole it from him, he took from this person the right to get this money. So he has to pay back the money and the most it was worth from the time that he took it to the day of its destruction. So the next chapter is called shuf'ah, which in English I tried to find the correct translation for it, and it would be like preemption right, or like in slang terms, first dibs. Preemption right. This is like the technical term, or first dibs.
Preemption
right. Preemption right.
Okay.
That before this person can sell it. We'll talk about shuf'ah, but before this person can sell this item, someone else has a right to buy it first. This is like the basic concept. And like shuf'ah in Arabic, it means dam, which means like encompassing something more, like adding something else to what was there. All right, and so the shuf'ah is the right for. So you have let's say we have a plot of land that we as business partners, we came together and we bought this plot of land together, and then I won, and we put into it, but you bought a third of it, I bought a third of it, and we don't know exactly where the lines are because this land, it's kind of mixed. If we were to put lines into it, it would be problematic. But we wanted to share the land, so we bought it together. So we're partners in it, but we don't necessarily have fine drawn lines for this thing. And if we were to put lines in it, then it wouldn't be shuf'ah, because it'd be separate. But if these are something like everything is mixed, where like the basic, like the benefit comes from a single area. Say the benefit comes from a single stream that runs through. And if we were to cut it into thirds, we'd miss out on this benefit. So this is shared between us. So in this case, say I wanted to sell my portion of this property. This person who is a co-owner of the property, he has first rights to it. So nobody else has to come in and break up this property for him. No, he has the first rights to pay for this, to buy this property out from this other person before he does this, because it's going to be something that's hard for him. Or maybe someone owns maybe they own like a gym with two other people. 3 people bought the gym. Of course, there's a jacuzzi and there's all this other thing. If someone wants to separate the gym, it's going to be problematic. You know, you can have this half of the gym. You know, like you're gonna have to put walls, and you're gonna lose like the benefit of the basketball court or whatever. So this is something that the other owners, they would have the first dibs to buying this before someone else. If he wants to sell it to an outside person, these people have the right to buy it from him, out from under him, before this other person buys it. That is if he's gonna sell it. So this is the basic principle of it. And so the author here, he says, Faslun. وَالشُّفْعَةُ وَاجِبَةٌ بِالْخُلْطَةِ دُونَ الْجِبَارِ. So he says this is something that's wajibah, like it's the right that is for this person. It doesn't mean that he has to buy it, but it's his right. It's something that is we have to give him his right. If he asks for it, then he's entitled to this right. بِخُلْطَةِ. And the khulta is something that's mixed. As I mentioned, it's mixed where you can't draw fine lines between the benefit of it. So as I mentioned, like mixed, like people that are multiple owners of a property, such as like say a gym, or something that, or as I mentioned, like maybe it's a pasture, but it has a stream down one end of it. That if you were to break up the pasture, it would no longer have the same benefit as it has as on one thing, as opposed to something that has multiple sides to it, or like something that has like an apartment. So someone owns one shaqqa in an apartment, and another person owns another shaqqa. So like this apartment and this apartment, they're separate. There's no problem with him selling this. There's not going to be a problem with this. And he says, Dun al-jibar. Dun al-jibar means this is not the neighbor. So if you have this is the Shafi'i opinion, that the neighbor, so you have, say, a person, he has his land, it's segregated, and then you have his neighbor, and his neighbor wants to sell his land. Does this person have the right to buy this land before someone else buys the land? The Shafi'i say, no, this person does not have that immediate right. He's not the one that is in the shuf'ah. So even though they're neighbors, the land's already divided. So if he sells it to whoever he wishes. He doesn't have a right to this land over this person if he decides to sell it to somebody else. He can sell it to whoever he wants. And so this, he says, dun al jiwar. And of course, this is a highly debated issue, but this is the view of the Shafi'i, that this is talking about something that is mixed. It's a mixed property that the person gets to shuf'ah, not someone who is just next to him. Such as like if my person that's upstairs, or the person that's in the next door over in the shaqqa, he's going to sell his shaqqa. Do I have a right to buy it from him before the person he's trying to sell it to? No. But the person who, like, say if it's a mixed property with a mixed manfa, then in this case, he would have the right. So if he's trying to sell it to this other person, he has to let this other person know, I'm selling this. Are you going to buy it from me for this price or no? He says, no, I'm not going to buy it from you. Then he can sell it to this other person. But if he says, no, I'm going to buy it, then he gets it. And it has to be there first. He says, Fima, and so he said, Dun al jiwar. So he talks about Ashufatu wajibatun bil khultati dun al jiwari Fima yanqasimu Duna ma la yanqasimu. And so he's talking about jiwar, the jiwar as opposed to the jiwar. And this is something that this is with something that actually can break apart. Like if Fima yanqasimu Duna ma la yanqasimu. So of course, if somebody is going to sell something, so say someone sold like the land I was talking about that had a mixed benefit from it. Technically, you could break it apart, but there's some things that you couldn't break it apart. Like someone was sharing a mug. Say they had a fancy mug and they were sharing this mug. This person owned part of it and this person owned part of it. You can't break this mug apart except that it's going to lose its benefit. Like there's no benefit in it, and otherwise. But if it is something that could have a benefit, if it was to be broken apart, then this is the thing that would have the ability to be to have the shuf'ah in it. في كل ما لا ينقل أو ينقل من الأرض كالعقار وغيره. So he says here, وفيما وفي كل ما لا ينقل من الأرض كالعقار وغيره بثمن الذي وقع عليه البيع. So there's some things that you can't move them, and so in these things such as that you can't move them, such as something iqrar is like an actual building, This is something that would have the right of a shuf'ah. Like this is the iqrar wa ghayrihi, which is something such as like he gives an example here in iqrar as such as like a hammam, which is like they would have these old. Say like a common bathhouse, like where they take care of people. There's still some of these around, but if this is something that would have the right of a shuf'ah, and you can't move this. You can't necessarily you can't like move it from one place to another, and so this is something that would have this right of shuf'ah in it. And he says بِالثَّمَنِ الَّذِي وَقَعَ عَلَيْهِ الْبَيْعُ, and this is like the amount that he's going to pay for it. If this person takes it, like if he buys it out from the other person that's going to buy it, he pays it for the same price. He's not going to pay it at a different price. He's not going to pay more for this. No, he paid it at the same price that it's going to be bought from by someone else. So when he gets the right to this. And he also says, وَهِيَ عَلَى الْفَوْرِ, and also the shuf'ah has to be done right away. So if this person, he doesn't want it right now, he wants to wait for a little while, no. This is a right that's here. You either accept it, you either take it, or you leave it. And if you don't do this, or if you try to delay it or something, no, that's not your right. You have to choose now, because this person is either going to sell it to this other person who's going to give him this money now, or you can take it from him now. But this is not something he can wait on. Of course, if his partner's not around, then he can send a message to him. To get the message to him, he has to wait till he gets the message. Actually, give him the chance. But in general, like this is something that has to be right now. So that he's not like prohibiting this person from the actual selling of this completely. He says, فَإِنْ أَخَّرَهَا مَا الْقُدْرَةِ عَلَيْهَا بَطَلَتْ. So if the person who has the right of shuf'ah, he can buy this from like this partner, if he delays this, if he delays making a decision on this while he is able to do it, like he's able to make the decision but he delays it, then in this case it goes away. His right goes away to take it. Batalat. That his right is no longer valid to take this in that way. And he also says, وَإِذَا تَزَوَّجَ امْرَأَةً عَلَى شِقْصٍ أَخَذَهُ الشَّفِيعُ بِمَهْرِ الْمِثْلِ. So what if, here gives the example, what if someone marries a woman and he has land that's mixed ownership between him and his partner. And he says, my ownership for this, I'm going to give it to the wife for a dower, for the mahr. All right? So he says, I'm going to marry you and you get my part of the property here. And this is mixed. It's the mixed property. It's ala mushah, or ala shariah. So this person, he has the right to get it. But how much is he going to pay? He pays the same amount of the mahr al-mithl. Like the same person that would normally pay this is how much he pays. And last thing here, then we'll go here. He says, وَإِنْ كَانَ الشُّفَعَاءُ جَمَاعَةً اسْتَحَقُّهَا عَلَى قَدْرِ الْأَمْلَاكِ. And so, and if there's more people than just one person that's a partner, then all of them get a right according to amount everyone gets the right to do this according to the amount that they own. Inshallah. And so we'll stop here for now. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
فلذلك فادع واستقم كما أمرت ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب وأمرت لأعدل بينكم الله ربنا وربكم لنا أعمالنا ولكم أعمالكم لا حجة بيننا وبينكم الله يجمع بيننا وإليه المصير.